But at this stage in the program, I would like to invite a few panel members or a few Nature Smart Cities partners to come on screen to reflect on all this work on the business model and on the challenges from their practical perspective as city practitioners. So I would like to invite, and they're already popping up in my screen, Lotte Meuleman from the province of Antwerp, who works with local authorities in the province on nature, recreation and landscape development. Wiebke Klemm from the city of The Hague, a landscape architect and the project lead for the Kromvliet Water Buffer Park. You've seen her star in the video already a few minutes ago. And Ling, who leads the Cambridge Canopy project in Cambridge City, which is their extensive intervention or effort to green and extend the tree cover of Cambridge City. Welcome all. You're all project partners and experienced city practitioners in green infrastructures in your countries. We've had an extensive overview from Phil back earlier on in the program about challenges that cities face and priorities that cities set when it comes to implementing green infrastructure projects. And I was wondering, we've seen that there's quite a big uniformity among cities and countries, but in your specific local context, are there very key or specific challenges that you face that jump out? And maybe I would like to start with Matthew. What would you mention as the first thing that comes to your mind in that respect in Cambridge?
So just to recap the question, that was just the general challenges of introducing more green infrastructure. Yeah,
but what is the dominant one in your case, perhaps?
So we're trying to grow the tree canopy cover of Cambridge by 2%. So Cambridge, for those that don't know it already or at all, it's quite a small city dominated by the historic colleges of the university. So it's quite a sort of open city, but equally compact in some ways. So there's lots of green spaces, but they are in the colleges. We have some big parks and meadows, and then actually some quite tight development in the historic centre of the city. So there's a lot of existing infrastructure where trees just cannot be planted. It's also a very old city, dating back to pre-Roman times. It was a trading centre based around the River Cams. Actually, it's been planted up over hundreds of years, so there's actually quite good tree cover here already. So we have 17% tree canopy cover. Our aim is to grow that by another 2% to 19%. So the main challenge is actually finding areas where we can plant trees. So there are a lot of trees and there's a lot of built infrastructure. So where can we do it? That's the biggest thing that we're trying to tackle.
So it's not so much the will to do it, but rather the possibility to achieve it. And maybe Wiebke in The Hague, does this echo your experience, or is there something completely different on the top of the list in The Hague?
Yes, I think what is special to The Hague is that The Hague is a city close to the sea, surrounded by big nature regional areas. And we do have a city that is growing. So within the next decennia, we need to build about 40,000 houses. So the challenge in our city is to make the city more dense with more houses, but at the same time make it more green and more sustainable. And the challenge then is indeed to find space, similar to the situation that Matthew mentioned, find space above and underground in first sense, but also to finance the greening and to incorporate the greening of the city with the regular projects within the cities where the underground infrastructure is maintained or replaced, or the public space is improved.
Right. So these are physical and financial challenges. Maybe Lotte, you're in a slightly different situation as a provincial authority. You're not the one making cities greener, but you are in the business of encouraging cities to make themselves greener. What is the specific challenge that you face in this role?
Well, specifically for the Zuidrand region south of Antwerp, 7 municipalities, as Dries mentioned earlier. The Zuidrand is very densely populated, and we try to assist the local authorities in realizing the blue-green connections. And this is what we've been working on in Nature Smart Cities as well. And there we see that the funding is a problem. It's always a combination of different types of original funds coming from different organizations, subsidies, etc. But what's the problem as well is the manpower or woman power, I can say, of officers cannot be expected to be experts in all sorts of things. They mostly have very different types of tasks to do. They hand out permits, and then they have projects like these. So it's always a combination for them as well, and that makes it difficult. So that's what we as a province are trying to do as well, to assist them in these matters. And I think this is what the business model can contribute to as well.
Exactly. So it's the facilitation that you want to provide to those actors. To the audience, feel free to raise your questions in the Q&A. I can share them with the panelists in real time. So don't be shy and share your thoughts or your questions, or even perhaps your critical notes. Turning to this topic of the business model that Lotte also already addressed, why is it so important? Wiebke, perhaps you could tell us your view on this. Why is it so important to develop a tool like this to accelerate the development of green infrastructures?
Yeah, I'm very happy also with the presentation that Vito just gave, showing the link between the academic insights and the practical knowledge and experience. Because what I see is that already creating awareness for the ecosystem services framework is a very essential step towards making our cities more green. I think that being aware within, I think that all local authorities already can make steps by being aware of the different ecosystem services. This framework helps a lot. I think up to now, we're aware of the benefits in terms of recreation and biodiversity, but showing this whole bench of services, not only on the environment, but also in terms of social and economic benefits, I think is a very important step. And it shows that that green infrastructure is very substantial, and it's not just the greening as it is as it is included in urban planning processes in the past and still here and there. So that first you make all the real infrastructure, the cars, the parking lots, and the buildings, and the place that is left over is left for green spaces. I think this framework of ecosystem services shows that it's very essential to put the greening in front of all the development processes, and this is very important.
So it suggests that it could be a tool not only to make decisions, but to educate in a way. The fact of having it available makes people think differently about their public space.
I was very happy that Phil in the very beginning also mentioned it's really a mindset. It's really a change in the way we think, and in that sense, I think that this results of the Nature Smart City project also can be is a mindset. It raises awareness, and it is a perspective for new dialogues, for new collaborations and actions. Right.
Right, I see you nodding, Matthew. You could argue from your initial presentation that in Cambridge, where the main challenge is more the physical nature, and it seems that your council is very aware of the opportunities and the importance of going green, or do you still see added value in having a tool like this for your town as well?
Yeah, for certainty. I think the mindset shift is huge. So whilst there is a great a level of support, obviously, for the project and getting green infrastructure rolled out across the city, it still feels like it's not, well, yeah, maybe not to paint it up in too pretty a term, sort of playing second fiddle to grey infrastructure. You know, historically, it's probably been seen as a nice thing to have, but we need to change that to it's a thing that we need to have. The whole point of the project is to build climate resilience in cities, and that's only becoming a greater and greater concern as we move forward. So it's a mindset shift, and raising awareness through tools like this is critical to getting more buy-in and uptake, and
Right.
that's a really important point, because as colleagues have already said, you know, we don't want this just to be a academic process. It needs to be something that is usable, and is integrated into everyday life in local authorities through project development and planning and implementation, sorry.
Right, yeah, so that integration, making sure that it is used and it becomes a standard part of the tool set is an important step towards this awareness. Lotte, do you have already envisaged, or do you have ideas about how you can use in your role this tool? Will it be something that you will be actively handing over to local authorities, or is it something you can use yourself? How do you see that?
I think both. We will actively promote it to our municipalities, but as a province, we do have some types of projects ourselves, mostly related to water and smaller brooks and things like that. So we could use it ourselves there as well. But I think it's mostly something that can be used as a communication tool as well. The results, I mean, then to communicate all the benefits to the public, not only to policymakers, but public as well. So I think there's lots of pluses there.
Right, right. So it shows diverse faces in a way, and you suggest that it is also definitely not restricted in its applicability to the lowest local territorial level, but there are different scales where you could apply it. I'm quickly glancing at my other screen. Any questions from the audience? Again, feel free to drop them. I see one coming in. So maybe I can quickly read it and see if we can share it with the panel. It's a question from Stephen, which is just at Matthew, where you ask that if you want to use increase the canopy cover as a way to know where they stand. Let's see. I'm quickly reading it.
I can
right.
In.
So yeah, you've probably been reading it yourself as well. But this is a question about how do you measure this canopy cover? So how do you quantify, in fact, this baseline and a defined target situation?
So it's purely a metric of the level of land area under tree canopy cover. So it's spatial. There's lots of different approaches to measuring it. We are currently using or carrying out a iTree eco study. So that does on the ground sampling of tree canopy cover. There's historically we've used some aerial survey approaches using proximetry. So that's a stereoscopic aerial survey. So it measures all trees and shrubs above 1.2 meters in height. So there's various approaches of doing it, lots of clever ways of remote survey, and lots of obviously approaches of using ground truthing as well. So yeah, but in terms of sort of using it as a way of comparing and almost making cities sort of play off against each other, saying we've got more than you, it's a nice idea, but it's not as simple as that, because obviously every city is different in its makeup. Some will have more major transport infrastructure than others. Some might have more water, so more rivers or lakes, etc. So it will never be a like for like. You can make similar sort of comparisons in similar cities. So ones of similar size, of similar population, you can kind of compare those, but it's never going to be a straightforward like-for-like comparison.
It seems more like something that is relevant internally. Let's say, where are you today and where would you like to be in a greener future, let's say 5 or 10 years from now?
What's your ambition? What's
exactly
achievable? So we're looking at all of the plantable area. So we've taken out all of the built environment, all of the main highway infrastructure, and looking at what's left and what's practically plantable. So that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I suppose if Stephen even wants to know more about the technicalities, do reach out, and we can maybe even get you in touch with Matthew to find out more about how this works. Thanks. We have another question coming in from Pippa Halings, and I would like to put this one to Wiebke. And the question is, how easy or difficult was it to get these green infrastructure projects in your city council without the business model, moving in front of this development, as it were? How do you justify costs and benefits?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I think my answer relates back to my earlier reaction on where we are and how we create awareness between the different sectoral sectors that are working on green right now. What I see in the city of The Hague is that we do have departments that are working on biodiversity, that are working on green maintenance, that are working on green planning and design, that are working on different aspects and actually different sides of the whole cycle of the ecosystem services. And right now we see that most of the green infrastructure is mainly financed from the green side, so the green maintenance part or the green biodiversity part. So of course this budget is limited, and I hope that with being able to provide more insights in the greater benefits of the green infrastructure project, so also on the socio-economic side, I hope that we can also create finance from other departments and from other internal budgets. So I hope that the business model also helps to overcome internal barriers and the sectoral organization in our organization, in order to not only bring together the experience and the knowledge, which is very important, so we can stay much stronger together if we have a comprehensive green policy plan, but we can also combine the design and the maintenance part, and of course we can combine capacity and finances. Right.
And the tool is something that can accelerate this more difficult effort that you had to do without it in earlier times. Thanks, Wiebke. I see another comment, in fact, coming in from the audience, which is interesting, from Johan Asselbergs. And he makes the observation that very often the sequencing is in the wrong order, where there's first extensive planning on the bricked and the gray parts of spatial development, and then at some point late in the process, somebody gets the bright idea to also think about adding green. And this is probably part of this mindset change that we've been hearing from some of you about as well. And it brings me to the question that I would like to ask all of you, maybe starting with Lotte. Apart from having a business model and apart from knowing a bit more about these ecosystem services, etc., what more do cities really need to do to advance the development of their green infrastructures, very concretely, to be able to make that change?
I think it's collaboration between different what you call it departments within the city, and together make a long-term plan so that you can take green into account from the very start and from the beginning, and not just at the end of the whole thing.
So long-term view, we've heard that before. It's really something that doesn't happen overnight. No. Matthew, and anything to add from your perspective on this?
No, I concur with Lotte. I think something like making it a policy, so introducing green infrastructure policies such that all planning and all development needs to incorporate it as much as possible. That could be something to think about.
And that's currently lacking, would you say, in many places?
I can't speak for many places, but yeah, certainly it's not something that's like in written policy here in Cambridge at the moment. We have things like climate change ratings. We're working on a biodiversity rating for development, so either introducing green infrastructure rating as well, or that could complement those, or having a higher level strategy or policy that could be something that could push it case forwards a bit more.
Right, right. Thanks. And Wiebke, how do you see this this bigger mindset and organizational change in front of us?
Yes, I think that it's very important to put green, and then really green in the sense of creating a more livable and sustainable city, more on the forefront of the agenda, and also to bring it more into the awareness of the elder men and the decision makers. So I think in the context of the Netherlands, I think of the we have the chance that next year there is a municipal election. So I think it's very important to bring it on the agenda of the new what is it?
The new council.
The council, yeah, on the different, and this is what I see what happens already. So there are different initiatives and different organizations that say, okay, we need to invest in green and livability in cities. So, and because I really think that also we need to overcome this short-term thinking, and we need to make it really a structural solution on the long term. And this needs to start, on the highest level, on the decision-making level, and at parallel, we as the people working in a municipality need to engage and work together much more, but also together with the cities, citizens, and with other stakeholders in the city, because it's not only the local authorities or us, the municipality of The Hague, that can make the city greener and more livable, but we need to do that together with the city's inhabitants and business partners, housing corporations and developers and other parties in the city.
Right, so that's all hands on deck, really, starting at the policy development level, at the agenda level. You could argue that the easy bit is to put something on the agenda, especially if it's like a cuddly subject as green cities, but you've all mentioned the issue of finance. We have an interesting suggestion from our audience, in fact, from Jeff Harvey, who wonders if any of your cities have considered raising local taxes in order to generate funding to green the city, and whether you have any thoughts or anticipations on how this would go down with the citizens of your city. Matthew, perhaps, if there would be a referendum or a daring councillor who puts this on the agenda for the coming years to raise taxes for greening the city, would that work?
I don't think it's needed. They're from the constituents in the city. I think there is the willingness there and the interest. It's sometimes maybe the barrier within the council itself. I've heard stories about councils being too conservative in their outlook and not wanting to try and implement things that might be seen as being too radical. So there's that, but equally at the same time, a lot of green infrastructure approaches don't need to cost more. In fact, often probably cost less than engineered and built solutions. So let's reduce taxes, right? And just implement better.
There's that matter of perception that green is more expensive, which is not necessarily always the case, which we should convey through a business model like the one we're talking about here today. Thanks very much for your contributions and for sharing your views on how the desired reality of greener cities can be brought one step closer through the business model and the challenges ahead for cities.